Hello, this is Bernie Gigas. Today's April 12th, 2023, and what follows is a presentation I'm giving to the board of Save Our Sodus later today, a Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River hydrology update for spring 2023. Looking at current conditions at the end of March 2023, the next few slides are all board pages. The level of Lake Ontario is currently at 246.23 feet. That was as of April 5th, just under where we were in 2022. But obviously we're rising more quickly than we were last year. The question is, are we going to be in trouble later this year? That's what I'm hoping to try and answer here today. Outflows out of Lake Ontario are lower this year than they were last year at the same time. And this is due to the 52-week look back, the way that the outflow is calculated under Plan 2014. Because we've had less supply over the last year than we had back in 2022, we are flowing out less, which means the lake is rising a little bit quicker than it would have last year. But just to short circuit this a little bit, I think we'll be okay. If we take a look at the weather forecast, level forecast, I'm sorry. This is from the board, issued April 6th. Again, looking at level of 245.23 feet, the end of the black line right here. And then forecasting for the remainder of really the wet period. 50% average puts us somewhere in the 246.75 feet, and the 5% forecast puts us at 248 feet. What does that mean to people? How does that help you? Well, if I go back to, and this is obviously very small and hard to see, but if I go back and pull up the forecast that was issued on January 5th, and I take a look at where we are today on that forecast, we are now at the 5% forecast line from January 5th. We've been tracking the 5% wet forecast really since November. And the question is that going to continue? Because per the latest forecast, that means we might be as high as 248 feet. Again, I'm going to short circuit. I don't believe that that's going to happen. However, what does this mean for the people at Sodus Point? The best place to look to start is the FEMA flood maps. FEMA just went through and did a whole bunch of revised flood maps that got issued, from which we have firms, flood insurance rate maps. Sodus Point does not have a new one. So the plot on the right-hand side, that black and white plot, is from 1977, which is the most current plot. And it shows the general area of Sodus Point. Greg Street, which is that peninsula running right down the center here into the bay, is really at 249 feet. That's where that's what the land is there. The beach to Lake Ontario is at 251 feet. And I am told that problems in Sodus Point start at about 247.2. And by problems there, I'm not talking about flooding. I'm talking about splashing. I'm talking about discomfort, but no real issues yet. But it begins to be more interesting in a negative way at 247.2 feet. We're now at 246.23 feet on April 5th. And the question is, are we in trouble? And that's what I'm hoping to try and answer here. So if I get into my analysis, I've plotted 2017 and 2023 comparisons because I think those are the two most relevant years. This I'm plotting NTS, net total supply, so the incoming water from Lake Erie plus precipitation plus runoff minus evaporation, the input into the lake, if you will. The blue line there, the jagged line, that is the long-term average. It's a weekly number, it's published weekly, and the blue line is the average. The gray line, that's a little bit more difficult to see, is 2017. And you can see that 2017, virtually the entire year, was above long-term average. And if you take a look at the area in April and May, we were massively above average. So we typically get an NTS topping out at about 9,000. And in 2017, we actually topped out at 13,000, almost 14,000. So that's, a big reason why we flooded in 2017. The red line is 2023. And the red line, for those of you that follow this, looks an awful lot like 2017. And that is concerning. I certainly agree with that. Then, if I plot level, Lake Ontario level, the green line is the average. Again, that's a weekly average, long-term average. And the black line is 2017. So 2017, we started slightly below average and then just started climbing all the way through to early June or late May and finished at 248.95 feet. The orange line is 2023. And we started out a little bit higher than 2017 and kept climbing and kept climbing. Not as steep as 2017, but then if you take a look now at April 5th, we are not far from April of 2017. If I plot everything together, you can begin to see the full picture here. The black line showing you Lake Ontario in 2017, the gray line showing you the supply line. And the orange and the green and the red lines look pretty similar to the gray and the black lines. Which then begs the question, doesn't 2023 look a lot like 2017? Are we in trouble? Well, here's the big difference. What you're looking at here is the Ottawa Basin snow water equivalent. How much stored water do we have in the Ottawa River Basin? Because you'll remember when the Ottawa River freshet starts, we have to reduce outflow out of Lake Ontario in order to not flood Montreal. And that sounds like we're doing Montreal a favor, but the way the effluent is really written is it prevents outflow from Lake Ontario being set so much higher than would have occurred naturally that Montreal suffers not just from the Ottawa River, but also from Lake Ontario outflow. That is the reason for the effluent. So getting back into this, if I take a look in the top left-hand side, that is the Ottawa River Basin, and that's the outline. You can barely see the outline here. And darker colors, red and then blue, indicate higher snow water equivalent, how much water is stored, and then lighter colors indicate less stored water. So top left-hand corner is 2017, top right-hand corner is 2019, and you can't even really see the outline of the Ottawa River Basin on the 2019 plot. That just tells you, how much water we had stored. Bottom left-hand corner, you can clearly see the outline here, much lighter colors. That's last year. Now, last year we still had a slightly above average Ottawa River freshet. So this just gives you an idea of what that looks like. And then on bottom right hand is 2023. And this is all data from March 30th, by the way, every single year. And so it's model snow water equivalent on the 30th of March, 2023. Now, if I take a look at this, clearly the bottom two are much, much lighter in color than the top two. Specifically, and I'm going to erase 2019 and 2022 because I'm comparing 2017 with 2023. Clearly, we have much less water in 2023 than we had in 2017. I'm just going to say that again. 2023 has more stored water as snow than 2022, last year, but much less than 2017 and 2019. And that is the big difference between this year and 2017. So while we're getting into the freshet, it looks like that we might flood and might wind up with another year like 2017. But the reality is we don't have as much water stored in the Ottawa River Basin to create the same kind of problems. And quite frankly, the forecast right now for the immediate future is much drier than we had in 2017. All of that's good news. So if I now do the current condition summary, level as of the 5th of April is 246.23 versus a long-term average of 245.31. We're 11 inches above long-term average, and the recent trend level is steeply up. That looks like it should be cause for concern. I get it, I understand it. However, the Ottawa River Basin has stored less water in 2023 than we had in 2017 and 2019, We don't have the same conditions on the Ottawa River that created the problems in the flood years. The Army Corps of Engineers and Environment Canada forecast is Lake Ontario peak in May 2023 with 50% of the models indicating 246.72 feet or less. That's above average, but not massively above average. It's about 0.4 feet above average. However, if very wet, 5% conditions persist, and they have been, there's the possibility of reaching 248 feet. Based on current conditions, outflows, and Ottawa River forecasts, 2023 peak above 247 feet appears increasingly likely. Precipitation and Ottawa River basin melt speed, how fast does all this melt, will determine if we reach higher. And here's where we get into opinions. I won't call it a forecast, I won't call it a prediction, I'll give you an opinion. My opinion that we will peak below 247.4 feet based on current weather forecasts. And for those of you that follow the board's page, I've said that we will be uncomfortable, I think, in later this spring, but not in widespread flooding. And 247.4 feet, I think, gets us into the uncomfortable range. But I think we'll be okay. Okay, so much for the spring 2023 update. I also want to take a few minutes to talk about my personal goals for the planned 2014 Phase 2 review as a member of PAG. This was actually done in November 2021, but it's still current, it's still relevant, and I wouldn't change a thing. In fact, haven't changed a thing. It is my opinion, it is not necessarily fact. Okay, Plan 2014 rule and limit changes. This is what I think should be considered as part of Phase 2 of the expedited review. Condition J, that's part of the approval documents, has been extensively used to evaluate F, L, and I limits and other operational limits as well. GLAM has been very active, or had been very active in testing the boundaries, and opportunities exist based on that. First opportunity is that a fixed upper F limit protecting downstream, irrespective of upstream level, is untenable. You can't have an absolute level in Montreal that says we will go no higher than this, and every additional drop of water needs to be held back in Lake Ontario. It's not fair, it's not right, it's not balanced, it has to be changed. There may be an opportunity to increase the L limit by 200 cubic meters per second seasonally. For example, not in fall. In fall, I don't think you can do that because that's when you need the heavy shipping. There's a lot of material that leaves the system in fall, and I don't know that we can push the element during that time, but we can potentially push it for the rest of the year. Based on 2020 and 2021 experience, and I believe we have some of that in 2022 and 23 as well, we may be able to increase the I limit during stable ice. I think there is a good case to be made for that. And then finally, the upper H14 criteria, 248.13 feet in June, is too high. At minimum, this should be reduced to 247.7 feet to reflect the onset of flooding on Lake Ontario. Do something about it when we start flooding, not do something about it when we're already in the middle of the flood and it's too late to do anything. So that change needs to be made. That's not new either. That point's been made as long as there have been discussions on Plan 2014. However, none of what I'm talking about here addresses the base rule curve, and that's a complex topic that I'm hoping to try and explain here. And remember, this goes back to 2021. When I first talked about this, I think the board acknowledged publicly, or the IJC and the board publicly acknowledged the 52-week look back affecting flows sometime last year in 2022. Okay, so here is an example of 2020 and 2021. In October 2021, the level was higher than October 2020. Not by much, but it was a little bit higher. At the same time, and this is not outflows comparing, the outflows in October 2021 were lower than October 2020. Level was higher, outflow was lower. How does that make any sense? It's an inconsistent outflow design. And I understand some of the logic behind it, but it's worth pointing out that it can create problems. So here I've plotted 2020 on the left and 2021 on the right. Level is orange for Lake Ontario, red is the L limit, and blue is the actual outflow. In 2020, and you can see here, you can see a vertical thin line and then horizontal thin line going over to 2021 to show that we're roughly the same level. Very, very close. Circle area is the area to focus on. So in 2020, we flowed at the L limit at that point in time. 2021, we were below the L limit at that time. And this is really just showing the same information in a different format as I showed previously on the board slides. So why is that? Why do we have lower outflow? Well, it's the 52-week look back for supply adjustment. The way Plant 2014 calculates outflow, I've spoken about this before, it takes level and says at this level outflow this much, which is the pre-project outflow, and then add or subtract an adjustment based on the 52-week supply of water, 52-week NTS look back. And if I do that for 2021 and 2022, 2020 and 2021, July, August, September, NTS, that's this circle right here, it's pretty similar, not a big change. But if you go prior to that, January through June, NTS was much higher in 2020 than it was in 2021, which means that that higher NTS induces a higher outflow at the same level in 2020 as you had in 2021. Looking at this a different way, the 52-week look back for supply adjustment. What I'm plotting here is the actual outflow in blue and the Plant 2014 rule curve minus NTS adjustment, which is fundamentally the pre-project outflow. So the orange line is if we didn't make an adjustment, and the blue line is the actual. Blue line is generally higher. The periods where the blue line is below the orange line is primarily in winter, or in spring rather, under the F limit. Okay. Now I'm plotting here Lake Ontario outflow supply adjustment over time, going from January 1, 2017, here through the end of December in 2021. So I didn't update this. What it shows is that the average, that's the yellow line, the average adjustment since Plant 2014 was put in is somewhere in the range of 1,600 cubic meters per second. Okay. Anything above that is above average, obviously, and anything below that is below average. Okay, if I take a look at the two periods, here, you can show that Plant 2014 overcorrects in reducing supply environments, meaning it drives levels down lower, and undercorrects in increasing supply environments. The 52-week look back needs to be refined. And I'm going to give you one clear example of where this really showed. Summer of 2022, we had high NTS, above average NTS. All the upper Great Lakes were above average, but Lake Ontario, with this 52-week look back, kept getting lower and lower and lower, producing a very low level earlier in the year than people are used to, and creating problems both on Lake Ontario and in particular on the river and Lake St. Lawrence. That was produced by Plant 2014 52-week look back. That needs to be evaluated to see if that's appropriate. Obviously, the short answer is, well, that can't be right because we don't like it. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. And we should just at least look at it to see if it's the right thing to do. So those are my goals out of Plant 2014 Phase 2 review. F limit, L limit, I limit, H14, 52-week look back. Essentially, all the parameters in Plant 2014 need some review, and all of them need some adjustment. That's it for the presentation. Let me just summarize real quick. Current conditions are slightly above long-term average. Spring 2023 flood risk is moderate. I think we'll be okay, I think we'll finish under 247.4, which is uncomfortable, but I think we're okay. Plan 2014 Phase 2 review has started. Relevant limits and base rule curve to be discussed. This is going to take probably 2 more years because it's already been going for a year. But it's a good process. Thank you for watching, and good luck in spring.